Frostpunk is a city-building survival game developed and published by 11-Bit Studios, a Polish game company known for its previous war-themed survival game, This War of Mine. While developing Frostpunk, 11-Bit Studios centered the game's design around three core ideas: survival, adaptation, and morality. The game would basically be a survival sim that challenges you to not only maintain your society's stability, but also make difficult moral decisions that shape the direction it takes. The main obstacle of the game being the harsh cold winter, which constantly threatens the survival of your settlement. As such, you must weigh your morals and values against the needs of your people as you strive to endure in this harsh environment. The story of Frostpunk takes place in an alternate timeline of the early 1800s, where advancements in steam power technology have been made possible due to the work of inventors like Charles Babbage. With the support of the British government, Babbage was able to develop a steam-powered calculating machine called the Difference Engine. This machine and its later iterations laid the foundation for the creation of even more advanced steam-powered technology, resulting in humanity advancing further than it did in our timeline. The British Empire benefited greatly from this, leading to a massive economic boom that propelled it to become an even greater world superpower. However, things took a turn for the worst. In 1886, abnormal weather anomalies such as snow hurricanes and volcanic eruptions caused a feedback loop, leading to a global winter. In response, the British Empire sent expeditions to the north to investigate the cause of these abnormalities, setting up outposts equipped with heat-generating towers to allow for extended research. As the weather worsened, it put great strain on Europe's economy, causing people to migrate to the south in search for a warmer climate. Unfortunately, many southern countries were unable to accommodate the influx of migrants due to the lack of resources and infrastructure, leading to anarchy as people fought for what remained. In a desperate attempt to save the empire, the British government came up with two solutions. One plan involved sending multiple vessels to their colonial holdings around the world. The second plan entailed sending icebreakers and large-tracked steam locomotives known as dreadnoughts to the research-rich northern regions where the expedition crews completed the construction of the generators. However, these strategies mostly failed, as an apocalyptic frost storm came from the south, devouring all in its path. With all communications and travel severed between Britain and the rest of the empire, the British government began the complete evacuation of London and the rest of the country. As the relentless snowstorm transformed the landscape into a frozen wasteland, the survivors created settlements around the generators. One such settlement, known as New London, was the destination for a group of Londoners traveling in a land dreadnought. The dreadnought had eventually run out of coal, forcing the survivors to travel by foot. The journey was treacherous and many didn't survive. Now, with only 80 people remaining, the survivors finally arrived at the settlement. It is here at New London that you, the player character, known as the Captain, arrive with the remaining survivors and assume the role of leader. Upon reaching the abandoned location, the Londoners discovered that the area is empty, with only a few piles of coal, crates of wood, and scattered steel wreckage laying around. It appears that the researchers who were previously here have abandoned the place, and now your task is to ensure the survival of the people of New London. When you arrive, you find yourself in a large hole in the middle of a glacier, and it's here that you must work to gather resources from the discarded materials in order to jumpstart the economy. At its core, Frostpunk requires you to manage resources, build and upgrade structures, and make moral decisions that have a direct impact on the survival of your settlement. However, the game's mechanics go beyond the traditional city-building gameplay, as the harsh winter setting and the need to keep the citizens alive and healthy while facing various obstacles creates an added layer of depth and complexity. So now let's go over the HUD and explain the resources available in the game and how you utilize them. Starting from the top left, we have coal. You use coal to power the generator so it produces heat, and as such acts as the lifeblood of your settlement. Wood and steel are used for constructing buildings and upgrading existing structures. Steam cores are complex engines that power more advanced buildings and machinery within the settlement. Steam cores are also a scarce resource that you can't produce on your own. The only way to get one is through exploration of the Frostland, so they are usually in short supply, meaning you have to be mindful of when you use one. On the other side, we have food. Obtaining a steady supply of food is crucial to the survival of your settlement, especially in the early game. Food can be acquired through hunting or cultivating crops in a hothouse, and later on must be processed at a cookhouse before it's ready to be consumed. Additionally, food can also be utilized to activate certain abilities of buildings. You also have access to an abundant supply of certain resources such as coal from the underground deposits and wood from frozen trees located around the settlement and inside the ice walls. You also have an infinite amount of coal and iron ore from mines. However, accessing these resources requires the use of advanced buildings and infrastructure. The utilization of these resources, prioritization, and methods of gathering are entirely in your hands, and the decisions you make regarding these resources ultimately determine the outcome of the game. Planning ahead is crucial, especially in the early game, as miscalculating can lead to severe deficits in one or more resources, eventually leading to the bottleneck of your entire economy. The temperature indicator located at the center of the HUD displays the current temperature of the day. You can also toggle the temperature display mode, which provides a clearer view of the current temperature and the heated areas. The time display located on the left side of the temperature indicator allows you to adjust the speed of the game, from faster to slower or even stopping altogether, which can be useful for taking a moment to think or speeding up the gameplay. The days counter located on the right side of the temperature indicator displays the number of days that have passed since the start of the game. It also acts as a weather forecast predicting when temperatures will drop or rise. Buildings in Frostpunk are divided into 5 categories: people, health, food, resources, and tech. The people's category includes buildings that serve the general population, such as tents that provide shelter from the cold, child shelters for housing children, the public house for taking a rest after work, the cemetery for burying those that are dead, and the fighting arena for entertainment. The health category is for building medical posts, care houses, and the infirmary to take care of the sick. Food includes buildings related to food production and management, such as hunters' huts, cookhouses, and hothouses. It is an absolute necessity to manage food in this game, as you will run out of food very often. Resources include structures for gathering and storing various materials. Gathering posts allow you to collect multiple resources within a given area. They also give the workers some level of protection from the cold, while resource depots increase storage capacity. Additionally, there are advanced resource gathering buildings like coal dumpers, coal mines, sawmills, wall drills, and steelworks, along with their upgraded versions available later on. The tech category includes buildings like the beacon and the outpost depot. You use these buildings to explore the Frostland, and they also provide special units that we'll discuss later on. Steam hubs are used for heating, and the factory is capable of producing machines such as automatons and prosthetics for amputees. Now the workshop is a unique building. It essentially grants access to the game's tech tree. This tree allows players to research new buildings and upgrade existing infrastructure. The tech tree is divided into 4 categories: heating, exploration and industry, resources and food, and health and shelter. Each category encompasses different branches of upgrades. Resources must be spent to unlock said upgrades, which can cost wood or steel. The upgrades are also divided into rows, which must be separately unlocked. There are a total of 5 rows, each representing a higher tier of technology, and each category requires more resources to unlock. The process of unlocking upgrades through tech trees takes time. The amount of time required for each upgrade varies, assuming the workshop is operating at 100% efficiency. Some upgrades may take 7 to 9 hours, while others could take 11 hours or more. The efficiency of research can be increased by building additional workshops or by utilizing abilities to boost efficiency. However, building subsequent workshops will yield diminishing returns, with the second workshop increasing efficiency by 30%, but by the fourth workshop the efficiency will only increase by 10%. As the leader of the settlement, it is up to you to decide which upgrades to prioritize. The choice of which upgrades to research will depend on the current situation, and may require prioritizing certain categories of the tech tree over others. Planning ahead and understanding the resources that will be needed is crucial in determining the next upgrade to research. Also take note that certain advanced buildings require steam cores in order to be built. This means that you must be strategic when deciding to research and construct these buildings, as steam cores are a limited resource. Now, in order to build any of these structures, you must first build roads to connect them to the rest of the settlement. The location and layout of the roads can impact the efficiency of the transportation, and the use of available space in the settlement. Buildings and roads can also be dismantled, which is useful for removing obsolete structures and rebuilding them in more optimal locations. Buildings can also have abilities. As mentioned before, these can cost food to use, and some come with the building itself, while others have to be unlocked. These can range from increasing working hours to boosting efficiency or lowering discontent. Frostpunk has two main types of units, workers and engineers. Workers do manual labor, such as gathering resources in the open or at gathering posts, working in factories, and cooking in cookhouses. They also perform physically demanding tasks that other units can't do, like hunting. Engineers, on the other hand, are specialized units that can also perform manual labor, but they excel at more complex tasks such as researching in workshops and working in medical posts. In addition to workers and engineers, there are several other types of units. Scout teams created in the aforementioned beacon search the Frostland. The Frostland being this barren frozen wasteland scattered with resources and stranded survivors. The scout units don't require food or sleep and can search for resources day in and day out with no interruption, and later on return to the settlement. Outpost teams are made in the outpost depot and are deployed to research rich locations in the Frostland and are responsible for extracting resources to aid the survival of the settlement. You can also force children to work in this game, although they are limited to basic tasks such as gathering resources and working in cookhouses. You can of course make them do more demanding tasks, and although they are prone to more injuries, you might have to use them if the settlement is short on manpower. And finally, automatons are these large steam-powered machines created in factories that can work non-stop with only a short period of time needed for recharging, although they work at a lower efficiency than normal. Each unit and building serve one or more specific purposes. Units are assigned to buildings via a pop-up menu, and each building has a maximum capacity for units. Here you must decide whether to fully employ the building or save units to be used elsewhere. This is where the challenge of unit management lies. It becomes a balancing act. You as the captain need to understand when to build certain buildings, when to dismantle them, when to assign certain buildings, and in which buildings to assign them to. And you have to do all of this all while keeping up with resource demands in worsening cold conditions. Now let's discuss about the most precious resource, time. Effective time management is crucial in Frostpunk. Workers typically start their shift at around 8 am and finish at 6 pm, constituting a 10-hour work shift. It's essential to make the most of this time frame and decide how to allocate workers, which buildings to construct, and which upgrades to prioritize. Depending on the situation, it may be necessary to extend the work shift to 14 hours or even 24 hours, but doing this carries the risk of increasing the citizens' discontent. In this game, you will encounter a variety of obstacles that you have to overcome as you strive to survive. These obstacles include the winter cold, hunger, disease, homelessness, housing, and refugees. The game constantly keeps you on your toes as you try to tackle all of these problems. Problems you have throughout the game are represented by these symbols. Red symbols represent immediate problems such as people that are going hungry or outright starving, or people that are sick or gravely ill. Grey symbols show how many people are being treated in medical posts or infirmaries and how many people are amputees or are frostbitten. The cold is the main obstacle that you'll have to overcome in Frostpunk. As the temperature drops, citizens of the settlement may become sick and unable to work. If they are exposed to the cold for too long, they may develop frostbite and become amputees, requiring prosthetics in order to work again. The temperature levels of the game will rise and fall over time, and it's up to you to anticipate and prepare for these changes in order to ensure the survival of the settlement. The heat mechanic is measured in levels, with comfortable being the highest and freezing being the lowest. Each 10-degree drop in temperature corresponds to a decrease of 1 level. It is important for you to carefully monitor the temperature in each area and building and take steps to maintain a sufficient level of heat in order to protect your citizens from getting sick and eventually dying. To combat the cold, you must heat the settlement using the generator. The generator is basically a steam-powered furnace that acts as the main source of heat. The generator heats a limited area around itself, initially creating a safe space to protect people from the cold. As the temperature drops, the heat level in the heated area decreases, putting citizens at risk of freezing to death. By upgrading the generator, you can increase the warmth of the heated area and expand its range. At the base level, the generator consumes 6 coal per hour, or 144 per day, and has a total of 4 heat levels and 3 range levels. Each upgrade in temperatures increases the heat zone by 1 level, or 10 degrees. However, this increases coal consumption, requiring you to ramp up production in order to meet demand. All roads must connect to the generator via steam pipes and electrical cables in order to be heated and function properly. To heat areas outside the generator's reach, players can use steam hubs, which are smaller versions of the generator that heat a smaller radius but consume more coal. Steam hubs are particularly useful for heating areas around coal and iron mines and can be set to operate on 10, 14 or 24-hour shifts to help manage coal usage. Of course, the generator alone can't keep the people warm for long. They also need roofs over their heads. If citizens have no shelter, they are more vulnerable to the cold. At the start of the game, you can build tents to provide basic protection, but as the temperatures drop, they will need to be upgraded to more insulated infrastructure like bunkhouses and houses. These buildings can also be upgraded with better insulation to keep the people warm. You can also equip certain buildings with inbuilt heaters. These also increase the temperature of the building, but at the expense of more coal. Due to the high demand for coal, you'll often find yourself cutting back on steam hubs or heaters, lowering the temperature level or range of the generator so you can keep coal consumption in check. Overpopulation can quickly become a major issue if you don't have enough houses to accommodate new survivors. Fail to do this, and now you have people sleeping out in the freezing cold, which, as we've already established, can lead to big problems such as unrest and increased vulnerability to becoming sick. Therefore, it is important for you to ensure that you have enough materials and resources to build the necessary number of houses to accommodate the population. In some cases, you might even have to leave people behind or not allow them access to the settlement. Managing hunger is a constant challenge in this game, particularly in the early stages where it can be difficult to balance sending people to hunt and having them work the next day. Gathering enough food to sustain the settlement while also managing other resources is crucial. Failing to deliver food promptly can lead to unrest among the citizens, so it's important to ensure sufficient hunters' huts and hothouses are in place to gather enough raw food. Additionally, constructing a cookhouse to provide food rations is essential. Fail to manage any of the aforementioned stuff and your people will start dropping like flies. Ultimately, dealing with all these problems boils down to how good you are at micromanaging and planning ahead. The game gives you little breathing room as you will constantly have problems to deal with, especially as your settlement gets larger and harder to handle. The general mood of the population is represented through the hope and discontent bars. If you fail to effectively manage your society and fulfill promises and objectives, hope will decline and discontent will rise. If you make enough mistakes, you will eventually face an ultimatum. Failing to meet this ultimatum can result in exile from the settlement or worse.
Glory to our great leader!
Triggering various game over states depending on the nature of your failures. Therefore, it's crucial to keep these bars in check and maintain a balance to ensure the stability of your society. In order to meet the people's demands, you must use your resources efficiently, make sure the population is warm, well-fed, healthy, and with adequate housing. As you progress through the campaign, you'll be faced with objectives and demands from the population. These tasks may require you to secure food, lower working hours, provide shelter within a certain time frame, or keep certain buildings for a period of time. Completing a task will raise hope, and you can also choose between a more demanding or less demanding version of the task, with varying rewards. If, however, you fail to meet these demands, it can result in an increase in discontent and a decrease in hope. You can also choose not to meet any demands with the penalty of increasing discontent. As you progress through the game, events will occur where you will be forced to make difficult decisions. For example, you may have to sacrifice some of your people to keep a factory from freezing, or refuse to allow people into the settlement because you lack the necessary space. Your choices in these situations will have long-term effects that can either benefit you or come back to haunt you in the future. The other way to deal with hope and discontent is through policy making using the Book of Laws. The Book of Laws acts like a tech tree that allows you to sign policies that grant you perks and abilities to aid you in governing the settlement. The book is divided into two main branches, adaptation and purpose. You start with the adaptation tree at the beginning of all campaigns. Each law has its own benefits and drawbacks. For example, you can sign a law for a 24-hour shift that gives you the ability to make workers work for a full day, but at the cost of significantly increasing discontent upon use. Or you can sign a prosthetics law, so people who are amputated can work again. Each law has its own cooldown period. The deeper you go down the tree, the longer the cooldown. Some laws are mutually exclusive, requiring you to choose between two different paths. Other laws also enable you to build specific types of buildings, such as the public house, but signing these laws also comes with a time constraint to build the building or risk increasing discontent. So it is important to carefully consider the consequences of your policy decisions and balance the needs of your society with the potential risks and drawbacks of signing various laws. The purpose tree is a bit different. After a certain event in the game, all hell breaks loose, and you are forced to bring stability to your settlement by choosing between two different paths: faith and order. The faith path focuses on spirituality and religiosity, while the order path emphasizes productivity and obedience. Each path offers its own unique set of abilities and buildings. The faith path is particularly useful for managing hope and unlocking important laws more quickly, and features buildings like the field kitchen, which can heat a specific building by 1 heat level, and the house of healing, which allows regular workers to act as medics and even treat the gravely ill. The order path is better at managing discontent, and offers abilities that boost efficiency, such as the agitator and the foreman, which can potentially increase said efficiency by a whopping 40%. Although the paths seem similar, they both have their own distinctive advantages, and it's up to you to decide which one to choose and organize your society around. And here lies the unique thing about Frostpunk's morality system. At first, the purpose tree has more tame laws, like building a watchtower to keep workers safe, or a field kitchen so workers can eat. But as you progress further down the tree, things start becoming more and more authoritarian, like signing a law to build a propaganda center or orchestrating a public beating. And this is what makes the Book of Laws so unique. Unlike traditional tech trees, the laws themselves act more like crutches than upgrades. As you make mistakes and experience rising discontent and falling hope, you may be tempted to sign increasingly questionable laws in an effort to maintain control over your settlement. This can eventually lead to you transforming your settlement into a totalitarian regime or a religious cult. And it's here that the game poses a moral question. How far are you willing to go to preserve the settlement? Will you become a dictatorial despot in order to survive? Or can you find a way to reach the end of the game without resorting to such extremes? It's ultimately up to you. In order to ensure the survival of your settlement, it's important for you to make efficient use of all abilities, units, and buildings. This also includes optimizing time and resources by keeping unemployment levels low, redeploying units from one building to another as needed, and assigning tasks to ensure that all available resources are being utilized effectively. You also have to consider which buildings to prioritize and how to allocate resources to address the various challenges faced by the settlement. This includes deciding how many buildings to construct, which resources to focus on, and how to arrange the buildings within the settlement to enable efficient movement for the citizens. Also, since upgrading takes time, you have to decide when and what kind of upgrades to focus on. To help you make informed decisions, this game includes an economy tab that provides an overview of resource consumption and production. By accessing this tab, you can see how much of each resource your settlement is consuming, and how much of each individual building is contributing to the consumption. This information is essential for making strategic decisions about resource allocation and ensuring that the settlement is operating efficiently. By keeping track of the economy, you can better understand the needs of your society and make informed choices that contribute to the overall health and stability of your settlement. In the game, you also have access to a tutorial menu. This menu is triggered whenever you perform a new action or construct a new building for the first time, providing tips and explanations to help you understand the game's system and mechanics. This tutorial menu is a valuable resource for helping you learn the ropes to quickly get up to speed. However, I do have a problem with the tutorial in that it doesn't do a good job at guiding you through the mechanics. You just get a pop-up menu whenever you build or unlock a new thing, and this is fine for understanding things at the surface level, but when you want a deeper understanding of how temperatures, micromanagement, and build orders work, then you'll have to look elsewhere. Having a separate tutorial mode might have remedied this to an extent. You also have the option to customize the difficulty level of the game and make resource management and overall gameplay more challenging. This includes options to make resources scarcer, increase the frequency of weather anomalies, make temperatures drop more quickly, and make the citizens more prone to irritation. But if you want an even greater challenge, this game also includes a survivor difficulty mode, which sets all difficulty levels to the maximum and disables the ability to save or pause time. In this mode, any mistakes made by the player are permanent, requiring great knowledge of the game, careful planning, and strategy in order to succeed. In my opinion, this is the definitive way to play the game, as the added difficulty and the inability to save means that every decision you make will hold tremendous weight, and you have to have a deep understanding of the game's mechanics, and every move you make must be carefully calculated. Frostpunk is without a doubt a challenging game. Not only do you have to juggle between managing multiple resources all while trying to keep the generator active so as not to freeze to death, but also keep up with research, decide if you want to sign a law or not, take on people's demands or reject them, keep discontent at a minimum and hope as high as possible, keep track of where and what kind of buildings you build as to maximize space, and always make sure to have enough of every resource. Frostpunk constantly keeps you on your toes, and that's what makes the gameplay so fun. In Frostpunk you can choose between several different scenarios, each offering a unique survival experience. The main scenario is called A New Home, and there are also two additional scenarios called the Arks and the Refugees. These scenarios are unlocked after surviving for 20 days in the main campaign. The Arks scenario tasks you with leading a group of engineers in protecting the seedling Arks, which contain the seeds of all known plants before the Great Frost. In this scenario, your task is to construct automatons and gather essential resources to prevent the Arks from freezing. Additionally, you must make critical decisions regarding whether to provide assistance to the nearby settlement of New Manchester, which is facing an imminent storm. In the Refugees, a steady influx of migrants presents a persistent challenge of overpopulation within your settlement. Later on, as the situation unfolds, lords also join the Refugees, creating a sense of discontent among both the aristocrats and the common folk. Your role here is to decide how many people can enter the settlement and ensure that there are enough resources to accommodate them. Later on, 3 additional scenarios were added as downloadable content, 1 free to all players and 2 as part of a season pass. The Fall of Winterhome, the free scenario, acts as a prequel to the game's main campaign, A New Home. The campaign starts right after the city is torn apart in this big civil war, as the previous leader's incompetence led to an uprising. So now you are basically tasked with cleaning up the mess of the previous leader. This scenario is extremely challenging, as you start out with most of the city burned to shreds, your entire economy is in shambles, and your citizens are sick, hungry, and distraught. The interesting thing about this scenario is that you have to use all your knowledge from the previous scenario campaigns. You have to remove debris, build new buildings, reconstruct housing, and try to discover what's wrong with the generator, all while dealing with the harsh winter. It's honestly an amazing final campaign to the basic game. You really have to adapt to everything the game throws at you, and build, rebuild, micromanage your economy in very intricate ways. Lastly, we have Endless Mode. Endless Mode, as its name suggests, allows you to play for an indefinite amount of time. Gameplay-wise, playing in this mode is basically the same as playing in any other mode. The biggest difference is that you can discover some lore about the game as you explore the Frostlands. You have 3 modes here: Endurance, the Builders, and Serenity. With Endurance being the standard survival mode, Serenity is basically an easy mode where you can build whatever you want, and we'll talk about the Builders mode once we get to the DLC section. Once you pick a mode, you have a myriad of maps to choose from. Some inspired from scenario campaigns, others are unique, and each offer a varying degree of challenge. Frostpunk's 2 paid DLCs, The Last Autumn and On the Edge, were released 2 years after the game's initial release. The Last Autumn is set before the Great Frost and tasks you with building a generator in an expedition site designed to protect humans from the coming winter. On the Edge takes place after the main campaign, A New Home, except now you're leading an outpost team tasked by New London to gather resources from an area rich in steel and steam cores. You also unlock the Builders in Endless Mode, where you basically start an entire settlement from scratch, generator and all. Frostpunk boasts impressive visuals, with detailed and immersive environments that truly capture the feeling of a frozen post-apocalyptic world. The game's dynamic weather system adds to the realism, with snow and ice accumulating on the ground and on structures as the temperatures drop. The lighting effects are particularly noteworthy, with the glowing morph of the generator and steam hubs providing a stark contrast to the cold winter snow. Overall, the graphics and art style in Frostpunk contribute significantly to the game's atmosphere and immersion. Frostpunk features a distinctive audio experience, with a soundtrack that perfectly complements the game's grim and desolate atmosphere. Music, composed by Piotr Mushal, I hope I didn't butcher that, features a mix of haunting and melancholic melodies that effectively convey the sense of hopelessness and desperation felt by the people of the settlement. In addition to the soundtrack, the game also features a variety of sound effects to help bring the game's world to life. The sound design is particularly noteworthy, with the game's various machines and structures emitting a variety of mechanical noises as they operate. The sound effects are also used effectively to convey the harshness of the game's frozen world, with the howling winds and the cracking ice adding to the sense of danger and isolation. One neat feature in Frostpunk is that the speaker's tone and way of speaking change as you progress down the Order or Faith path. As you adopt increasingly extreme measures, the speaker's voice will become more strict or religious.
time to rest. Remember those who work overtime in your prayers.
Our leader calls us to work. Slackers will be severely punished.
It's a small touch, but it adds to the game's world building. Unfortunately, barring the intro sequence, there's no actual voice acting in the game, and I understand that because the game was built by a small studio, but it would have added so much more to the immersion of the game if they had voice acting. Despite this, the writing of the game is well crafted and does a good job at effectively capturing the feelings of desperation and the unwavering resilience within the people of New London. Overall, the audio in Frostpunk is an integral part of the game's overall atmosphere, and helps to fully immerse you in the game's world. Frostpunk 2 is expected to build upon its predecessor with new features and improved graphics and sound design. Frostpunk 2 is set in New London 30 years after the events of the main scenario campaign, where after the Age of Coal, conquering Frostland for oil extraction is expected to be the new salvation of what's left of humanity. So what do I want in Frostpunk 2? One potential addition could be the incorporation of mechanics from all the scenarios in the first game, such as multiple paths in the purpose tree of the Book of Laws. You could have all previously mentioned branches in one scenario with the addition of new ones as well, where each branch has different advantages and disadvantages. This would make a more varied and distinct experience for the players. Maybe they could even add hero units or important story characters where adding these units to workplaces gives some sort of boost to productivity or new abilities. They could also add better integration for mods, add voice acting to the characters in the game, have more specializations for units like scientific engineers and medical engineers maybe, also add more playable exploration and the addition of more playable cities. Maybe even make it so you could manage multiple cities at the same time. Who knows, the possibilities are endless, and while it is uncertain what direction the game will take, I'm eagerly anticipating the release of Frostpunk 2. In conclusion, Frostpunk is a unique and challenging survival strategy game that tests the player's decision-making skills as they try to keep their society alive in a harsh, frozen world. The game's mix of resource management and moral dilemmas make it stand out from other games in the genre. The unique Book of Laws system and branching playstyles adds a level of replayability that keeps the player coming back for more. With impressive visuals, a well-crafted soundtrack, and a deep moral dilemma at its core, Frostpunk is a must-play for veterans of the genre and newcomers alike. The game's rich lore, various scenarios, and branching decision-making system make for a truly immersive and memorable experience.